You're listening to Backstage Leadership Conversations, brought to you by the Digital Tourism Think Tank in collaboration with Abu Dhabi's Department of Culture and Tourism. I'm Nick Hall and I'll be your host for the series. So join me as I take a global view on the exciting trends and developments happening in the MICE sector with a multitude of truly insightful leadership conversations from truly global perspectives, all recorded right here in Abu Dhabi. Throughout this series, we'll be discussing sustainability, events for impact, horizon technologies, and considering the implications for business events and the wider sector. So if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, be sure to do so now, wherever you get your podcasts. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to be sitting down with Guy Bigwood, the CEO of the GDS-Movement. And Guy himself is certainly a true visionary leader. He brings a dedication to bringing about sustainability in the meetings and events industry, and has himself a very rich history in the sector. In fact, he's very well earned his reputation as a chief changemaker and has an incredible depth of knowledge and passion to enlighten our conversation. Today, we'll be discussing his journey from leading corporate events around the world to building a global movement. And we'll be talking about the critical role that destinations play in driving sustainability, as well as the innovative solutions being implemented to address climate change within the sector. He'll be delving into the importance of incremental performance improvements versus transformative mindset shifts. And he'll be talking about how cities like Abu Dhabi are evolving their sustainability efforts. Whether you've been in the industry for a while and perhaps you feel like you've heard it all, or you're looking for some fresh insights to help you think differently about where our priorities should sit when it comes to sustainability in the MICE sector, this is certainly a discussion you won't want to miss. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an enlightening and inspiring conversation.
But I'm the CEO of the GDS movement, the Global Destination Sustainability Movement. The title my team gives me is the Chief Changemaker, because all of my team are changemakers.
And how did you end up doing what you do?
Good question. I worked for MCI for 14 years. Many of you know MCI, one of the biggest event companies in the world. And in 2005, I organised an event for the top 500 entrepreneurs in the world, and I needed a keynote speaker. And I'm an entrepreneur, and one of the things I think is the most important is how you pick yourself up when you drop down and you fail. Any of you who are entrepreneurs, you know that feeling. We don't always win. And so I invited this guy who was almost the president of the US, Al Gore, to come along. And he'd done a lot of work, but I didn't know that he wasn't famous in 2005, really, for that work. It was before Inconvenient Truth in the book. And he came, and he had this speech that he was supposed to deliver, and it wasn't what he delivered. He delivered basically one of the first times he did the Inconvenient Truth. And it just hit me a lot about the realities of climate change. So this is 20 years ago now. And I came out of that, and I'd invited the board of MCI, and I said, "What are you going to do about this? Come on, what are you going to do that?" And Roger Tonda, CEO, then kind of got the finger, pointed back at me and said, "Good, you're now responsible." And so that's how I became the sustainability director of MCI, by complaining. And then I had to do something about it. So that's how I got in the world of sustainability. And in 2018, I left MCI to start up the GDS movement, and that's what I've been doing since.
Great. Now, the GDS movement has become quite a phenomenon. I think it's a good way to describe it. I know that when I meet destinations, they are usually one of the first things they're very proud to say is their ranking on the GDS index. For those of the listeners that perhaps aren't familiar with that, tell us a bit about the GDS index and why this is so important.
Yeah. So years ago, I think it was really kind of when I was working with Copenhagen on the COP, I realized that destinations were pivotal on this change of sustainability in the meetings industry. And so we got a group of destinations together and we started working out, how do we do this? How do we move as a group of destinations in Scandinavia, this was, forward? And someone said, that's great. I love the idea, love the vision. It's brilliant. But how do we know when we're there? So out of that workshop, we came up with this idea that we needed some type of scorecard then to evaluate performance. And since then, that's evolved to a Scandinavian index, which was launched in 2012. In 2016, we launched a global index. Today, we have 100 destinations this year benchmarked around that. And it is a program to know where you are and then drive performance to get better. And it's really interesting because this morning we were talking in the keynote about this concept of marginal performance gains. Make a big difference. And that's what the British cycling team did to become the best cyclists in the world. And that's exactly what we do. So we look and we tweak and we help destinations to tweak and tune all the little 1% that makes massive jumps in terms of sustainability performance.
And you've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, so it's really good. I mean, we retitled the movement because there isn't a movement, and so then we could bring academy and consulting and many things around that. So today we help cities understand where they are and then get better. Yeah, and that's developing climate action strategies, diversity strategies, all that type of stuff.
So very much incremental developments, but towards those bigger goals that many destinations are setting for themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting because the index is really about incremental change. But the academy and the consulting work we do is about mindset change, about the big jumps, because the incremental stuff is good, but it's not going to get us there. And so we need the big mindset shifts. And so we have this concept of 3 things need to change. We need new mindsets, we need new skill sets in the DMOs, and we need new tool sets to help us get there. So that's really what we focus on.
So obviously, with those 2 leaps in mind, the small changes and the seismic shifts, if you like, how would you describe the MICE sector here in Abu Dhabi from what you've seen?
I've worked a lot here in the last 20 years, and every time I come back, it blows me away, just the scale of the development and the infrastructure. And I don't think I'm disappointed this time, having not been here for since before COVID. So that's mind-blowing. The focus on attracting big events, FIFA and the COP coming up and things like that, those are the events that catalyze thinking, the DMO, catalyze professions. And so that's really exciting. On sustainability, it's interesting. In the MICE sector, we have some big challenges right here. I mean, 50% of the waste normally in a buffet is thrown away. You've got to fly to get here in general. So there's some quite apparent things that hit you. What a lot of people don't understand is the work being done by the UAE government and the municipalities. I've done quite a lot of work for the government and the municipalities in other sectors, not in tourism and events. And it's mind-blowing. They have a plan to 2030, a plan to 2050. They're even working on a 2070 plan now. So there's a lot of big thinking. Already here in Abu Dhabi, I think it's about 62% of the water is reused. So what you see on all that beautiful greenery is recycled water. But recycling is only 10%. But the goal is to drastically change that. And what I've seen here is when the goal is set, it happens. Otherwise, people get kicked out, right? So there's some major goals here. And so the trick here is to take what's happened at the government level and other ministries and municipality departments and really push that down into tourism and events. And that's an exciting opportunity. It's got to happen to remain competitive. And if anyone can do it, I think they can do it here.
So if anything, the scale that we see here, which is impressive, and I think it's part of its identity, part of the product offering is this hugely experiential kind of form of industry. This scale can also be turned into ambition then to use that huge investment that's put into the sector to also shape the future of the sector to be really radical in how we think about the solutions and technology and processes and how we actually change that industry.
Totally. And what the UAE is brilliant at is integrating new technology, right? I mean, because there's new hotels here. Some of the most efficient hotels in the world are here in terms of energy usage. The chillers in the hotels, the elevators are some of the most advanced. Some places are changing them after a year or 2 years because they worked out it's cheaper to change because the technology is evolving. So how do we leapfrog that? And I think we had an example today, which is an example I really like. And I'm going to use a company called LeanPath, who puts AI cameras onto waste bins and helps chefs know what's being wasted, how much being wasted, and the cost of that waste. So if we bring that into the kitchens here and scale that across all of the kitchens and all the hotels here, that's a massive opportunity to save money and save waste. But be super creative, because the chefs then understand what's being wasted, so you can create new plates out of what's wasted, or you realise that we shouldn't be serving that. You change. So that's just one example. I think the potential here for rethinking stuff.
It's huge. So if we reflect on the MICE sector more broadly around the world, what would you say are some of the biggest changes, challenges, developments that you've seen over the last year?
I mean, really has been the year of coming back, right? Last year was quite painful, right? We were starting events again. We didn't have any people, especially in Europe. I think pretty much everywhere. It was difficult. I know we did some big events and it was hard. It was stressful. This year, there's more people available again. Creativity's there. It's interesting. I think a lot of people have kind of very much pushed away hybrid. They're like, we just want people here. We don't want that technology. We want people in person. I wonder if next year that will come back and start to integrate it again. But I don't know. I mean, that's a $1 million question. Here it's booming. I was just looking at the figures here. What's fascinating in UAE is more and more people are coming from Western typical countries, and so that regional hub is demonstrating that shift of Middle East and UAE to being this dominant power in the world. And so it's fascinating times for the meetings events industry. So how do we strategize around that? How does the government here and the cities and the leaders of these organizations really think of the power to deliver social impact and legacy, right? Or societal impact, should I say. So how do we really use events to accelerate the shift towards a decarbonized society and net zero? How do we shift to getting rid of diabetes? How do we use events to get rid of many of the other health challenges they're starting to have in the Gulf states? And that's what we can do, but that takes a little difference. It takes different metrics. We're not just about numbers and arrivals. Still, that's what was presented today. I want to see different numbers. I want to see more than economic impact. I want environmental impact, positive environments, positive social impacts, social change that's been created, and that's the possibility. That's what Sydney's doing. That's what Glasgow's doing. That's what Washington's doing. And UAE needs to really step up on that side of things, because they're not quite there yet, even though it's bubbling, but they're not on the front foot.
Now, when we think about social change, we often think about the very direct impact at the community level. And this is an important pillar of sustainability. But you mentioned there the kind of power that conferences and events can bring in terms of, say, the scientific community, the medical community. Tell me a bit about where you've seen events being somehow catalytic in bringing net benefits to communities and society in other parts of the world.
So I just use an example because I just come back from that. We work with an event called ESCRS, so it's the European Society of Cataract Surgeons. So the guys working on your eyes. I didn't know, but that's probably the most frequent operation that happens in the world. Okay, so it's massive. A massive environmental impact because of the way healthcare is today, especially after COVID. You use a pair of scissors or a scalpel, you throw it away. So we've been working with them on a sustainable event strategy, and we've kind of really moved that a long way. But one of the goals from the start wasn't about how many recycled bottles we get or how many waste we divide. That was to be an exemplar, to do the baseline, to give us the credibility. What we wanted to do was change the conversations with the doctors and the policymakers and the healthcare suppliers. And that, through the event sustainability initiative we've had. And so now we've launched a whole program with them, or supported them to launch a whole program globally that is just changing the conversation. It's changing the mindsets, come back to that, and it's building the skill sets. So we have hospitals that have cut their waste by 80% now in this. And that is because of the event creating that change. So that, we've got some of the suppliers, Johnson & Johnson, who are making products with 90% less plastic, less packaging. So that's just an environmental impact as an example, but that has massive social impact, right? So that's something that really kind of satisfies me, and it shows the power of an event, really, because we've transformed an industry in hospitals around the world.
And I guess it's a reassuring message that sometimes bringing people together to discuss or explore ideas or solve problems and challenges directly, especially if we bring the world's best minds from a particular area of expertise, can really lead to something much more concrete than perhaps trying to do that without that human interaction.
I totally agree with you. And basically, I think if you're not going to do that, you shouldn't meet.
So when we think about some of the technologies on the horizon, especially we've seen a lot of interesting examples of digital twins, human digital twins we've also heard about today. So how do you think these developments will impact the industry? Do you think they'll make it stronger and more forceful in its approach to be innovative? Or do you think the industry could find further challenges down the line?
There's always going to be challenges, but there's always opportunities, right? I mean, digital twins, I don't know enough about that. But we're seeing already hologram technology getting so much better that you can bring someone in, it's decent, and it's not going to cost you $100,000, So that is already here, and it's just going to get more and more popular and cheaper. AI being integrated, we just heard an example here. There's keynote speakers using it to analyze the audience and know who's there. I use it to kind of fresh myself up on some of the questions that I should be asking for a destination. So AI is definitely going to come in. It'll be interesting to hear what PCMA is doing with Spark later. That's going to transform a lot of stuff, and it's going to change a lot of the people we hire today. Their roles will change, and we're going to be having to hire more creatives, again, what we heard today, and better project managers, because the generative stuff's going to be done for us, right?
So it'll be interesting to see how that changes the functions and the work that we all do in the industry.
Oh yeah, it's totally going to change.
And if we kind of go to what touches at your core, what excites you most about the developments you're seeing right now in the sector?
I think it's the same thing that terrifies me. So I have this mix of outrage and optimism. I'm outraged at how climate change is spiraling out of hand, what we've seen in Libya and Pakistan and Canada or whatever. Particularly it's really affected my team. Many of my team have been really hit in the communities and people we work with. So I'm outraged by that. And that's getting exponential. So the impacts are just going to get worse. But the solutions are exponential too. And so we're in this moment where AI and technologies and renewables are just coming out of this. So in a place like that, that exponential growth of solutions is really exciting. And I think it's ironic that UAE, as someone who's a country really focused on the oil industry, has the brilliance and leverage to look for an alternative source of income for the future, which is coming up to par. And they can accelerate the change. Just go to Mazda up the road. Not sure if you've ever been there, but that as a model city is mind-blowing. So there's so much we can learn from here.
You mentioned outrage, so I think maybe we should touch on this, as climate change is something that is the most important need of today. As if we look at the global tourism industry, and in particular the MICE sector, are we doing enough? And if yes, what are we doing to mitigate these risks? And if no, what do we really need to do? Do we need to be more radical? What does that look like?
So No, we're not doing enough. And there's a very personal outrage there. I mean, what are we? Depend on what numbers you look at, but it's around 10%, the carbon emissions of tourism, but it's projected to go up to 25% of total carbon emissions of the planet. That's a bit terrifying, eh? Yeah. If we don't do anything about it. We're not going to hit 1.5. Can we hit 2 degrees increase? So we are material. We make a difference, not only in carbon emissions, direct carbon emissions to energy, but through waste and materials and like that. So we've got to change. So that means that we all have to step up, from you and me with small consultancies to Abu Dhabi and Dubai with their destination strategies, to the hotels that we're in. We all have to get much more serious about decarbonising and regenerating. We have to do both, right? And there's some people that we work with who've got it, right? You know, we have places, cities like Helsinki and Copenhagen, up north, people always jump there, but people like Belfast and Glasgow who've changed smoky, dirty cities to be leaders in this new low carbon and more equal world. So it can be done. And so my message to the people in power here is, please step up and really develop a climate action plan for your tourism and your events industry, and spend money to engage and support and coach and educate people and the business owners and entrepreneurs to make this go forward. Because it can happen. It can happen pretty quick. And I think the speed of business here, it can happen very quick.
Those examples you point to, Helsinki in particular, they're great best practices that I think show a sense of excitement and optimism, perhaps in a very understated way, as Nordic destinations often are, but they show the benefits in community way of life, the health benefits. So I think it's an interesting model to look towards.
Well, you know, and that's the beauty of the GDS index, how we learn, analyse and learn from each other. So, you know, we took, you know, built on the work that we've done in the Nordics and Gothenburg and places like that, where we got 94% of hotels certified. And we've taken that to Belfast. Let's use that as an example. And at Belfast, when we started work, I think we had 5% of the hotels were certified. Now it's 82% of that. You know, in just 2 and a bit years, not even 3 years. And that's my focus, good strategy, good support, some funding, and great communication. So if we can do that somewhere like Belfast, you can do that here. But what's interesting is some of the side effects that you don't always write down in your strategy sheet. And it was when someone said, you know, what we've done is we're making Belfast a kinder city by the kind of compassion that we're bringing in, the social projects that have been catalysed by Visit Belfast and the other teams to feed the homeless and feed the poor. That wasn't on the list, but that's come out of it, and that was what hit me, is we're making a kinder place. So this work catalyses other impacts, economic, and well, Belfast is a great thing. Look at the growth of Belfast, and it's partly driven because of sustainability.
That's great. Thank you very much, Guy, for taking the time to sit down with us today.
Great to be here.
Today, Guy Bigwood shed a light on the brilliant work he and his team have been doing at the GDS Movement, and how his path through the world of sustainability was sparked by an unexpected keynote speech from Al Gore. We got to know a bit more about the GDS Index and why so many destinations depend on it for benchmarking and improving sustainability indicators across the board. Guy shared invaluable insights on how cities like Copenhagen and Belfast have transformed through focused sustainability strategies, emphasizing incremental and mindset shifts as crucial elements. We also learned about the powerful impact of events like the European Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeons in driving industry-wide changes towards reducing the environmental footprint of events. Guy also highlighted the challenges and immense opportunities that lie ahead in the new technologies that we see emerging today, such as AI and digital twins, and he discussed how Abu Dhabi's scale and ambition can set new benchmarks for the industry. His mix of optimism and outrage reminded us of the urgent need for radical actions to combat climate change and decarbonize the world that we live in. After all, it is the only world we have. Finally, we discussed the potential for the MICE sector to not only catalyze significant changes in sustainability, but also foster social impact that can make cities kinder and more compassionate places. The episode truly showcased, for me at least, the transformative power of strategic thinking and why it's so important to foster collaborative efforts when we think about the future of the sector. You've been listening to Backstage Leadership Conversations. Be sure to hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. If you're enjoying the series, why not take a moment to leave a review or get in touch and let us know what you think. Discover more industry insights by heading over to our website, thinkdigital.travel, where you'll find lots more interviews, podcasts, case studies, and industry research, all at the click of a button. Thanks to the Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism for making this possible, and thank you for joining us today.